am well aware of their strengths and their weaknesses. I know what their fears are. And I know what this divorce did to and meant to my daughter. So I know exactly why she doesn't want to know who her husband cheated on her with. This is Bedtime Stories, Grown-Up Edition, Operation Anteater, bonus episode 3, part 3. And I don't never do that. But baby, it was getting way too good. And I got some more fire I got to give y'all before we move on to part 16. So when we left off, the Queen Mother had gotten all the deets from Idra and Catherine. She was 730 hot. She'd already beat the snot out of Catherine. And when Stephanie gave her the tap, it did not make her less pissed off at both Idra and Catherine. It hid the fact that they knew Ron was at the very least playing for both teams. Not only was she pissed, she was embarrassed because the main meeting room where the round table was held absolutely did have a round table. The heads in training sat in a semicircle on one half of that round table. And then there was a gallery where rows of seats were strategically placed where their right hands in training, and any generals who were involved and operations that were to be discussed at the roundtable meeting would be seated to observe if they needed to provide testimony or if there were individuals who had been summoned to the roundtable. There was a table that was placed directly in front of the roundtable between the roundtable and the gallery, almost like Congress is set up when they hold congressional hearings. And at the time when Saint made his grand appearance and snatched Ron out of the closet, there wasn't an empty seat in the house. In addition, there were at least 20 individuals connected to the meeting remotely via secure video conference. There were finishers, coverts, lieutenants, the tech team that included Lorenzo and the Anteater, all of whom needed to observe just in case they needed to answer a question, take down a note for later, take some action immediately, access a file, and provide relevant background information. That means at least 40 people had heard that Ron was gay. All 40 of those people knew that Anya had divorced him, and since neither of them had shared the details of why that divorce had become necessary, all 40 of those people had to have been telling themselves stories. Idra had asked them all not to say a word. But expecting 40 people to keep a salacious secret like that was absolutely laughable. And at the Lopez estate inside Catherine's villa, the Queen Mother said as much. She said, "Y'all know I gotta kill Ron, right?" Then she looked at Catherine and said, "And I gotta kill you too. Otherwise, these young niggas gonna think they could play with me and mine." And Catherine just closed her one good eye, because there was absolutely nothing that she could say, and there was certainly nothing she could do. She knew that her only hope was Idra, and he had been trying his absolute best to remind the Queen Mother that she was trying to turn over a new leaf, that she'd agreed to allow her children to manage their own personal lives, and that Anya had been doing a stand-up job of managing a very difficult situation. The Queen Mother said, "I get that you two don't get it, and this isn't shade, but y'all don't have kids. I understand how people could get tired of hearing me brag on my children. I love to talk about their educational achievements, their professional accomplishments, the wonderful parents that they are. And up until 6 months or so ago, I bragged about the wonderful marriages that they had and how wonderful my daughters and son-in-law were. I even bragged about their accomplishments. And before I started bragging on their spouses, I'd heard the whispers. It was commonly believed that I was bragging on my children because I was taking credit for all that they were and all that they'd done. And I was blind to their faults and flaws. That I thought that me and Anders were the perfect parents. Those who were doing the whispering either didn't know me or they didn't know Christ, because I was never actually bragging on my children, and I was certainly not taking credit for that which I was bragging about. I was bragging on my God. There has never been a day when I wasn't completely and fully cognizant of the fact that if not for the glory, the grace, and the mercy of Jesus Christ himself, I wouldn't have those children. They wouldn't be who and what they are. They wouldn't have accomplished what they have. And God's promises that he made me about their lives wouldn't be coming to fruition. I am well aware of their strengths and their weaknesses. I know what their fears are. And I know what this divorce did to and meant to my daughter. So I know exactly why she doesn't want to know who her husband cheated on her with. And it's not because she doesn't care or because it's irrelevant. It's because of what she believes it means about her. You should have told me, not so that I could interfere, but so that I could do what mothers do. We prepare our children for the pain that we know is coming by reminding them of all of the times that God was faithful, of all that he's already done in their lives, all that he's already gotten them through, all the ways he's already protected their hearts, so that when the devil starts telling them stories about who they are, they hear our voices reminding them of who God says they are. Meanwhile, over at Q and Angela's house at the family complex in Denton, Melissa had company. It was the first time in months that she'd been able to have company, and this visit had more than one purpose. She'd invited Spider over so that she could give him an invitation to her Sweet 16 party. The invitation came with stipulations. Melissa said, "So here's the thing. I want you to come. I do. But you gotta do me a favor to come." Spider asked, "What kind of favor?" Melissa said, "You need to make sure that my brother and Tamara are in attendance at my birthday party, or you don't even need to bother coming." Spider said, "How on earth you think I'ma manage to get your brother and his girl at your party when nobody even knows where they are?" Melissa said, "I don't know, but I suggest you figure it out." Spider said, "Come on, Mel, that's crazy. I don't even know how I'ma get me to your party." Melissa said, "Oh, my family has all of that worked out. And I have a feeling that your parents are definitely gonna let you go." Spider said, "You always got a feeling." Melissa said, "That's true. And I have a feeling that you've been in contact with my brother. And you're the key to making sure that he and Tamara are in attendance. So, if you want to come to my party, I suggest you get on that. I also suggest that you get out of here." Spider was like, "I just got here. I came all the way over here and that's it? You give me an invitation, give me an ultimatum, and now you're kicking me out." Melissa said, "Pretty much, but you could call me later if you want." Spider said, "That's cold, Mel." Melissa said, "No, what's cold is you pretending like you don't know where my brother is and like y'all aren't in cahoots. I know that you're getting ready to leave, and you're just delaying your departure until after my party. Well, you might as well leave now, because if you don't get my brother and Tamara to my party, you won't be there either. And that's on Mary's little lamb, Jesus' sandals, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus' little brother James." Spider said, "You really on your princess." Melissa said, "And you the frog." Spider said, "Princesses kiss frogs. Let me ask you this. Am I your date for the party?" Melissa said, "Whatever you need to tell yourself to get my brother and Tamara to the party. And if you know like I know, you'll get out of here now." Spider said, "If the frog shows up to the party, you plan on kissing him?" Melissa said, "Maybe, maybe not." And then Spider wished that he would have gotten out of there, because at the door, he heard Q say, "Lil' boy, you need to find yourself something safe to do. And believe me, you will not find it here." And Spider almost wet himself. Q and Angela had decided that they should head home instead of staying at the Lopez estate during the round table's recess, because they both needed to tap in with Melissa. So Q went to find Melissa, while Angela went to have a conversation with the little birdie. And after Spider ran out of the house like his pants were on fire, Melissa laughed hysterically while saying, "I tried to tell him." And Q asked, "Is there something you want to tell me?" Melissa said, "No, not really." Meanwhile, in another room in the house, Angela and Mom Brenda were playing catch up. Mom Brenda had just finished telling Angela that while she and Q and everybody else were all head down in the war to beat all wars, Melissa had been keeping herself very busy. One of the things she'd been doing was planning every single solitary detail of her epic Sweet 16 party. Homegirl had identified a caterer, planned the menu, identified an event planner, and planned the decorations, designed a cake and party favors, designed her own dress, and chosen a seamstress. She'd even found a live band and a DJ and made sure they held the date. Mom Brenda had seen no harm in helping her solidify those details. She figured Melissa knew something she didn't. And when Melissa told her that she'd called her Uncle Manny, and he told her that the date she selected was perfect, then he proceeded to agree to her guest list and all of her stipulations, offer up one of his mansions on the island, provide all the security, and contact the light to arrange for all of the students and staff to travel to Puerto Rico as a school-sanctioned excursion. And he agreed to cover all the transportation to and on the island for the entire weekend for all of her guests. Mom Brenda figured that Angela and Q would have a lot more free time pretty soon, and Melissa agreed. And both Angela and Mom Brenda just shook their heads, because Melissa's gifts were out of this world. Speaking of gifts, Angela asked, "What is this that I hear about Melissa taking offerings in exchange for spiritual advice?" And Mom Brenda said, "Girl, I think it started right around the time that Big Wood left and headed to Denver. The soldiers that you all had on Charlotte and Samuel's house must have mentioned that Melissa had been going by there every day after it was revealed that Big Wood was alive and that he'd been staying there. Because the next thing I knew, soldier after soldier, lieutenants and generals, was showing up at the main house while we were running the in-house daycare, asking to speak with Melissa. I was supervising those visits, of course, and they had no issue with that. I got a bird's eye view of gifts I didn't even know the girl had. And it didn't take long before they started pulling out wads of money. And I kept trying to make it clear to them that it was inappropriate for them to pay a 15-year-old for using the gifts that God had given her for that very purpose. But they started insisting. Then Melissa told me she'd prayed about it, and God had given her a vision of a nonprofit organization and asked me to help her establish it. And since I know nothing about starting nonprofits, I called Anya, and she helped Melissa establish a nonprofit. She set up a Cash App, a Venmo, a Zelle, and a PayPal, and had me collect all the cash. Then they set up automatic withdrawals to send tithes to the Salvation Center of Puerto Rico, offerings to the Salvation Center of Dallas, and 50% of the proceeds divvied up between Anya's nonprofit, The Light, and the treatment facility where Melissa and Stephanie had been patients over in Puerto Rico. The other half, Melissa is saving until God tells her how best to use it. But she hasn't used a dime for her own personal use. There's so much money in that account that she's gonna need an accountant at some point. Anya said she can't establish a 501c3 until she has a board, establishes payroll, and the funds in her reserve are designated, whatever that means. And Angela's mind was blown. She's amazed and ashamed. And when she tells Mom Brenda as much, Mom Brenda asks, "Why? I know you're not feeling bad about the fact that you've been running around trying to save the world, or at least our world. Your children have been well taken care of. They've been in good hands, and you could only do what you could do. I have no idea how you've managed to ensure that Vibrantly You continue to run, handle that business with the 5 families, while ensuring that your younger children still received your liquid gold, and worrying about Michael." Angela said, "Speaking of Michael, I got to talk to him and see him remotely, and he's doing great. He's not coming home, but all of my concerns are alleviated for now." Mom Brenda said, "That's wonderful. And I'm sure you'll see him in person soon, because Melissa said that at the very least he's going to be at her Sweet 16. And then she handed Angela an oblong tube. When Angela broke the seal and shook out the contents, there was an old school scroll inside. And when she unrolled it, she saw that it was Melissa's party invitation, written out in calligraphy on linen paper. And when she read it, she was shocked to see that the dress code was formal. There was a website to RSVP, and in lieu of gifts, Melissa was accepting donations to a ministry called God's Favorite. Mom Brenda said, "Yeah, that's the name of the nonprofit." All Angela could do was chuckle. She said, "There's another thing I want to ask you about. What you know about Melissa and Spider?" Mom Brenda said, "She has a healthy, appropriate affinity for him, but she's been rather tight-lipped. And I think that it's because she knows something about his future. And that future is somehow connected to Michael. Speaking of Spider, they were talking in the den before you came in." Angela said, "Oh, Lord." Because the last thing she wanted was for Q to find Melissa alone with Spider before they'd finished their conversation from earlier. Before she could get to the den, though, she saw Spider running out of her house like a bat out of hell. She got to the den right before Q could interrogate Melissa. She said, "Babe, how about you go talk with Mom Brenda and I'll talk to Melissa, okay?" Q was not pleased, but he knew that the mood he was in was not one that was going to allow him to properly measure his words. So he did as his wife instructed, and when they were alone, Angela asked Melissa to give her the 411. Melissa said, "Spider and I are just friends. That's all we can be right now. But one day he'll be my husband." Meanwhile, at Angela and Stephanie's estate in Dallas, Stephanie opened the bathroom door after she ended the call, where she told the Queen Mother what Anya had said about not wanting to know if Ron had cheated on her with a man. And on the other side of that door, there was Anya. And Anya was pissed. Her face was screwed up, and she was signing emphatically. She was signing so fast, Stephanie had to ask her to repeat herself, and she wasn't trying to buy time. She really didn't catch it all. Anya had signed, "You trifling heifers thought that it was a good idea to drop hints instead of just telling me flat out that that dirty bastard was screwing a man? Y'all really just sat here and made a fool out of me?" And Stephanie emphatically signed, "No, I promise. You've got it all wrong. I don't know what you overheard. Hell, I don't know how you overheard." Then Anya held up her cell phone. She'd used the app that Easy had put on her cell phone to eavesdrop on Stephanie's conversation. Anya wasn't playing when she said she was no longer letting niggas play in her face or put a wool over her eyes. And by niggas, she did not just mean men. She meant people in general. Something about the way that Stephanie reacted when Rennie brought up the possibility that Ron could have been cheating with a man made her think that Stephanie knew something. And while she didn't want to know, she also didn't want to be the only one who didn't know. So she followed Stephanie's behind and used the feature on the app to isolate Stephanie's voice from the background noise and provide every word that came out of her mouth in closed caption. She played back a snippet of said conversation, and Stephanie said, "Let's go back into the sitting room. I promise I'll explain everything." Then she told Anya what Saint had revealed at the round table. And Rennie was flabbergasted. She said, "Girl, I had no clue. I was just being myself. I barely know that nigga you was married to. But I know niggas, so I know it's possible. If I would have known any of that, I would have just came out and said it. I don't give a damn what Idra said. Truth be told, had I heard any of that, I wouldn't even be here with y'all right now. I'd be at Ron's house whooping his." And Anya signed, "It sounds like we taking this handbasket on the road. Let's go." And child, why did Anya say that? Because y'all know the Three Musketeers didn't even try to talk her out of it. They jumped up, grabbed their purses, jumped into Stephanie's car, and headed for Ron's. On the way, Stephanie called the Queen Mother and told her to tea. And the Queen Mother said, "I'll meet y'all there." And when they got there, all hell broke loose. Anya rung the doorbell while the Three Musketeers hid in the bushes. Ron opened the door and signed while saying, "How can I help you?" And Anya signed, "You good, sis?" And before Ron could respond, she punched him in his face. He grabbed her, slammed her into the wall. Stephanie, True, and Rennie jumped out of the bushes. And then all four women proceeded to jump Ron's behind. At the same time, Idra pulled up on two wheels with the Queen Mother in the passenger seat. She jumped out of the car, ran across the grass while yelling, "Let him go! Let him go!" Confused, True and Rennie stopped what they were doing. Stephanie pulled Anya off Ron. All four of the women stood back. Ron pulled himself up off the floor, and the Queen Mother ran up his steps, two at a time, and took a flying leap from his porch to inside his door and drop kicked him in the chest. I told y'all that 60-plus-year-old woman wasn't nothing to play with. When he fell, the Queen Mother signed to Anya, "He's all yours." And then Anya went ham. But hearing the commotion, Ron's house guest came out to see what was going on. And when Kane bent the corner, Stephanie tapped Anya on the shoulder. When Anya looked up and she and Kane made eye contact, it all clicked. Kane was the college friend who Ron brought on at the nonprofit to serve as the paralegal who reviewed all of the potential cases to see if they were good candidates for the legal services that the nonprofit provided. And when Anya served Ron with divorce papers, Kane tendered his resignation and then disappeared without a trace for reasons unknown until that moment. And when the light bulb went on, Anya went off. Anya stopped stomping on Ron and ran down on Kane. And when she did, the Three Musketeers joined her. While all of this transpired, what were the soldiers doing, you ask? Oh, they were watching. The minute that they saw Stephanie and True, they decided that since they were severely outranked, they should probably mind their business. And when the Queen Mother and Idra pulled up, they decided not to mind their business and pull out their cell phones. So the beatdown was captured on cell phone video from every angle. The lieutenant did have the presence of mind to at least call Ezra. And when he ran down the goings on to Ezra, Ezra told him, confiscate all the cell phones, send him one of the videos, delete all the videos, hold all the soldiers on the premises until he got there, even if their shift was over. He was a little busy and it would be a while. A few minutes later, the lieutenant had to call Ezra back. Frustrated, Ezra answered the phone. He was surprised to hear Idra on the other line saying, have your men escort Ron and his company to a safe house. Anya and the Queen Bee aren't done here. No pass.
You move like a snake, now I'm cutting the grass. I let too much slide, I gave too much grace. Had me looking stupid with a smile on my face. Had me biting my tongue, trying not to go low, but you kept poking the bend. Now watch how far I go. You thought I was quiet cause I couldn't get loud. Nah, bitch, I was classy, but look at me now. I tried to be peaceful, I tried to be fair, but you mistook kindness for me being scared. Big mistake, wrong one, wrong day. I don't do fake love, get the hell out my way. You can keep that title, you can keep that lie, you can keep that fake story you rehearsed on the side.